Hey, everybody. I'm Michelle with LMichelleMedia, media that moves you forward. And I'm excited to be hosting another edition of the LMichelleMedia Journal, where, as you know, we like to talk to the leaders behind the platforms, behind the content, behind the creative things that we see, to talk to them about being forward, being innovators, and also about being conscious. What is it that they think about the different things that are happening in our world? Namely, what is it that they think about race and diversity and moving forward? And so I'm excited today because I have, I do have a tendency to call everyone friend, but I mean this I mean it every time I say it anyway, but I do have a friend here from a group that I really highly respect and am so excited to be a part of what's going on. And that group are my friends from Social Media Church, the conference. Now, Social Media Church in itself is a whole vibe, okay? But Social Media Church, the conference, is a first time for this type of event that we'll talk about in the platform in general that's happening. But I want to play a quick video and then I'll get to my friend who's here as my special guest.
Hi, I'm Neil Smith, and I've been co-hosting the Social Media Church podcast.
Well, hey everyone, my name is Aaron, and I'm one of the co-hosts on the Social Media Church podcast, and I am so excited that you are checking out the SMC, the conference. We'll break down the ins and outs of each platform and which platform you and your ministry should be investing time in.
Brought together over 40 of the best minds to speak into the church and to speak into you so that you can maximize the opportunities that exist for us today to know people and to make them known.
Hi, I'm Nachi Lazarus.
Hey guys, I'm Haley.
I'm Jeremy Poland.
I'm so excited to join you
So excited to join you all at
thrilled to be part of
Social Media Church, the conference.
Social Media Church Conference.
In the Social Media Church, the conference.
I'm happy to be a part of Social Media Church, the conference.
Can't wait to connect with you in the Social Media Church, the conference.
I'm so excited to join you in the Social Media Church, the conference.
I'm happy to be part of Social Media Church, the conference.
Now, how amazing is that? Social Media Church, the conference. I'm so excited. And I want to introduce my friend, Aaron from Social Media Church. Aaron, what is good? I'm so excited that we finally get to meet on here, like face to face.
For real. Yeah. Elle, thank you so much for having me on. I remember the first time so many nice words. Thank you so much. I need to return the favor with nice words. The first time that I heard your voice was Nils, my co-host on the Social Media Church podcast. Mm-hmm. Interviewed you, and I learned all about what your audience is so intimately familiar with and what I have become intimately familiar with since hearing this podcast, which is the Snapchat goggles and just looking at life through the lens. And I was so blown away, but it was less to do about Snapchat or even the glasses, but more to do about you were so passionate about representing yourself in an authentic and real way online, ultimately to bring people close to Jesus. And that was that authenticity and that realness is something that I've been passionate about online and specifically on social media for a long time. And so I was like, man, this lady Elle is just killing this and just speaking straight to the core. And I don't own Snapchat glasses. I've never done it in that way. I don't think very few have. And certainly no one to the scale. And so, Elle, I just appreciate you having me on. I appreciate what you're doing in this space and how you're encouraging leaders. And so that was my first time encountering you. And it was just a natural fit to ask you to contribute to the first ever conference, which is basically just a compilation of all of our greatest guests over the course of 8 years on the podcast.
And so tell us, oh my gosh, where do we start? So we'll get to the conference, but I guess we really can't get to the conference until we first talk about the mission that is kind of behind it and that started it all. And you said that mission, of course, is Social Media Church.
Yes.
This in itself is innovative. So can you tell us just about that?
Yeah, well, this week on Thursday, we'll release, and you might be listening to this later, you can go to socialmedia.church and find all of our episodes. But this week, we're launching an episode which is going to kind of kick off the first of many episodes promoting the conference, just getting to know the speakers. We have close to 50 speakers that are going to be contributing to the first ever conference. But we wanted to kick it off with the founder of the podcast, a guy named DJ Chuang. And DJ started this podcast in 2013 with the goal of, and this is when social media was just in its infancy. I graduated college in 2013, and I remember playing football, and some of the players on my team, some of them had Twitter. Like it was just that, but that was really the extent of social media at that time. And it was a new concept for all of us. And we weren't tweeting from our phones, we were tweeting from our laptops and computers. But DJ wanted to start having conversations for the sake of the church to help them on social media. And so the desire was to interview church leaders about social media. And so one of those first guests was my co-host, Nils Smith, who at the time was the online pastor for a church in Texas called Community Bible Church, CBC. And Nils is like one of the original online pastors and really paved the way in this space. And it came to the point, so DJ recorded, I think he had a little over 100 episodes that DJ did. And then Nils came to him and was like, hey, I want to start a podcast. And essentially DJ, out of the generosity of his heart, was just like, hey, I think you should take this one. And I'm going to go start doing some other stuff over here, but I think you should take this one. And Nils is like, well, yeah, that'd be awesome. Like, how much can I pay you for it? And DJ's like, nope, just steward it well. And so however many years later, and there's been a few co-hosts before me, and it's actually worth mentioning, right after I graduated college, I got into ministry, and I was the community life director at a small church of 300 in Oregon, a small town called Albany, Oregon. And we met in a middle school. And so I was the community life director. And so I had to build community within the church and put our church within the community. And since we didn't have a building, the best way I found to do that was through Facebook groups, online on social media. And so I started listening. I literally Googled Social Media Church. Actually, our worship leader Googled it my first week in the first step. And like, hey, let's just see if there are any podcasts. And this one came up, and I started listening. And that started a 5-year relationship over Twitter with Nils, and at the time, Jay Cranda was the co-host, and Jay Cranda will be speaking at this conference.
Right.
And now I have an opportunity 5 years later. Actually, both of them played a role in the job that I now have at a church just outside of LA here in Southern California. And now I get to be the co-host. And so it's very surreal. The podcast that has walked me through my infancy in ministry, I now get to contribute. And the same thing is happening. I mean, I get messages pretty frequently of people who are like, I found you. I have this question. I was like, how did you find us? And they're like, I just Googled Social Media Church and the podcast came up. And so, yeah, it's been a lineage of people with generous hearts wanting to give things away. And it just came to the point this year where we're like, I think one of the best ways we can serve the church is actually putting together a really valuable 3-day conference online to continue this mission of having conversations with church leaders. But it's really morphed now into how do we help churches or ministries or individuals amplify the ministry that they're trying to do on social media. And we realize that and you know this, Elle, and your audience is very familiar. Mm-hmm. We don't all have the time to look at the ins and outs and research the new things like Clubhouse and TikTok. There's just not enough time in the day. And so we really love being able to play the role of, look, we'll do that for you. We'll give you our thoughts on this and even some case studies of how people are using it, so that you and the audience can be creative in continuing to figure out new ways to reach new people, ultimately with the goal of bringing them to Jesus.
I am just that it makes my baby leap so much because media ministry, since the early 2000s, before I even really knew that you could pursue something like media ministry. I mean, I think where I was from, it was like a tape ministry or something like that, but it wasn't the emphasis that when I came in and just kind of started this media ministry brand, Jesus Christ Publicists was what I heard in my heart. I just was passionate about using the latest media to get the word out. So to have beyond the event, to have a space where people can come and continue to be in the know is extremely powerful, extremely empowering. And like you're saying, leave the work to us because it is work trying to figure out, you know, all the tools. I will ask you this before we get more into the conference. What do you say to people? A lot of times it's just really fear that stops people from, you know, kind of using the tools and stepping out there and getting their message out there. Do you have episodes or just parts of the website that we can send people to that would just kind of help them to become more comfortable with the concept of ministering through media?
Yeah, I really believe that's kind of every episode. And I think to answer the question of scaling it down, I think what's really important, and Elle, this is really what stood out to me and what I was attracted to in listening to your heart and your passion around this, is that not every platform is for every person. And so I think and so I would say every episode of our podcast is probably not for every person. We're going to certainly cover a wide breadth and introduce you to the leaders in the space, but there's probably going to be certain things that speak to your core. And I think it's really important when there are so many options, and we live in a day and age where we have access to so many different ways of presenting the gospel. We need to first do the hard work of understanding how has God wired us, and what has he positioned us to do? And so if you're wanting, if you found that that's YouTube for you, yes, we have episodes on YouTube. We have a great one with Sean Cannell, just an incredible, that's one of the ones that really inspired me to start exploring what it would look like to put together a vlog. That turned out to I think I put out like 100 episodes. And so I tasted it, but it was just not sustainable. I had some young kids. I still have young kids at the time, but that was just not sustainable. But I learned a lot about YouTube. And so, yeah, there's episodes on just about everything. And so it's figuring out how you're wired, what you're passionate about, and what you're wired to do. Because each of those platforms, as you know, Elle, have different languages. And they require different skill sets in how you communicate. It's not just about posting the same thing across all platforms and hoping that it sticks. And so I think it's first doing the hard work of understanding who you are to your core, and then researching and looking, and you can do that by listening to a bunch of different episodes on the podcast and finding which one speaks your language. Like you're on a lot of different spots, but you understood Snapchat, and you even understood, okay, this is how these glasses can be used. And then you went in on it. And so I think we all have an opportunity to amplify ourselves and what God has put in our hearts through social media. And that's always there. It's not social media that puts it there. It's God that puts it there, but we have an opportunity to amplify what God has put inside us and do it at scale. That's the advantage that technology and social media gives us. And I think that's ultimately what we're passionate about most at Social Media Church, is helping leaders do that and tap into what's already there.
Wow. Okay. So Social Media Church, the conference, July 13th through 15th.
Yeah.
All virtual.
All virtual.
Make sure I put that in all caps. All virtual has pretty much three main things. But I do want to bring this up. Know and to be made known. Did I get that right? Known and to be made known, or know and to be made known. Can you talk to me about the tagline?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the next step after understanding how God has wired you is to do your ministry at scale. And in Jesus's whole thing is to make himself known and to allow others to be known. And Jesus does that for each of us individually. And I think there's a desire for us to help, whether it's pastors, whether it's churches, whether it's just Christian media in general, the idea of helping people understand that they're seen, that that there's a God that wants to know them,
Yes.
and to make that known. And social media gives us an opportunity to do that. I think there's also just a fundamental understanding or a fundamental level of community that's being communicated through that tagline as well. And I think that's often missed, especially this day and age where it's just, how can we market? And we see the large companies with lots of money. Well, we see two things. We see them having the resources to put ads on the platforms, but then we also see the platforms needing income because these platforms are free.
Right.
And so it becomes very ad centric, and we lose the whole piece of social media that is social. And we're social because we want to know people and make them known and ultimately have community with them. And so no matter what we're presenting, I think how we're wired inside is for community, and we have the ability to communicate in such a way where we can make that community a thing. And so I think that tagline really ultimately boils down to community, and that community happens amongst us as leaders who will be attending the Social Media Church, the conference, and figuring out how do we do this. But then there's also the understanding that we are each creating our own communities within the brands. I mean, there's the LMichelleMedia community, which is all of you who are watching or listening to this.
Yeah.
And it's conversational. It's not buy this. It's actually community and helping spur each other on to ultimately all of us tap into what's inside of us and how God's wired us to reach others, to make others known.
I love it. I love that. And I know there are three kind of main tracks, if you will, with the conference that surround content, platform, and strategy. Can you speak to the three main tracks of the conference?
Yeah, I think these are the three areas that people have the most questions around. What platforms should I be on, and what are they, and what do they even look and feel like? And so we're going to make sure we have all of the platforms covered. And then as far as content goes, content creative, it's kind of like a slash. But what are we creating to put on there? And we have some people who are even talking about the creative process. So kind of starting a little bit more upstream, but all surrounding the creativity and the creative that happens on these platforms. And then both of those things can be found and had, and they will fall flat if you don't have the last piece, which is strategy.
Right.
And each of those platforms have a strategy, and there's a way to do it, and there's a way to make it sustainable, and there's a way to even take one piece of creative content, and then through your strategy, that one piece works on all of the different platforms. And so we have lots of people who have spent lots of hours, and their whole jobs are based around figuring out how does this work. And that's the strategy day, and probably one of the most overlooked and important days of the conference.
Because it is, as much as it is us figuring out the platform and getting the content together, we got to have a strategy to reach people. I mean, one of the first questions you asked me is, what is the audience? Who am I talking to? And those are the things that we just kind of gloss over. Well, everyone, because everyone needs the Lord. And I say that a lot.
Yes.
But I think we've been talking about at my church a lot about this being the intentional year. Yes. And I think that the conference even speaks to that, and saying that if you want to know more about media and using media for ministry to reach people and connect and community build, then no more thinking about that. Let's move on it and become a part of a conference like this at a very affordable price.
Yeah.
It's super affordable to even come and experience all this great wisdom and insight.
Totally. And I want to speak to that for a second, because obviously we've been giving away free content, which I think is really important and will continue. This podcast isn't going away. There isn't any payment for the podcast. We're going to continue to interview and give valuable content. If all you did was listen to the podcast, you would get so much out of that as well, where you wouldn't even need to attend the conference. The reason I think we've discovered, because there are a lot of free webinars, which are great as well.
Mhm.
And I think the reason we've attached a small, so the early bird rate is $30, and then it'll move up to $49. And again, there's close to 50 speakers over the course of these 3 days. What we have found in watching a lot of people who have done conferences, having lots of conversations, is that when there's a little bit of capital involved, the attender cares more and actually implements. And so I think what we care about is not the $30 we're going to be getting. We care about what the $30 ultimately does for you as the attender, which is creating buy-in and interest, and ultimately execution, which is what we care about most, is that you would put these into practice. And we genuinely believe that if you listen to what these, I'd be impressed if you'll be able to actually hear all 50. You're going to probably have to look on our website and look at, obviously, Elle, you need to listen to Elle, but you need to maybe decide who some of these people are that you're really going to go out of your way to listen to. But if you implement it, and Elle, you know this, like if you just understand the platform you need to be on, if you understand how to create content and then you put a strategy to it, your ministry will grow, and it will grow at scale, ultimately reaching more people. It just will. We've seen it over and over and over again. And the reason it won't is because of a lack of buy-in. And so that's I think really the only reason the price is attached there, is because we've seen that people care about it a little bit more because they put some capital down. They're going to pay attention, they're going to listen, and then their ministry is going to be better because of it.
Wow. Social Media Church, the conference, July 13th through 15th. And like we said, this is an all virtual conference. And I am so blessed. You know, I have to put this up. Oh my God.
Yes, look at that.
How in the world? Good. Like,
all virtual.
Oh my God. I'm so excited to be a speaker, a part of this conference. I just think that this is amazing. And just a little insight onto what I'll be speaking about.
Please.
Extending the narrative. Extended narrative, really, for extended reality.
Yes.
I want to, and that brings me into just the final part of our conversation for today. We were talking a lot about the verdict that came out in the George Floyd trial, and just how freeing as a race, African-American woman in her 40s, so middle-aged, and, you know, loves God, progressive, but is so just painfully aware of what we have endured just as a race. And that's where the glasses come in. The glasses kind of raised my level of awareness over the past few years of journaling in this way. And so it was important for me to talk about tech and the innovation. And I did that for much of the pandemic, just talked about it. Media, we did Media Mondays and things like that. But as of lately, it just became increasingly more important, for as much as we just talked about all that innovation, to speak about consciousness and humanity, and where some of the thought leaders like yourself are when it comes to race, and what it means to create these kind of, or extend the narrative, like I'll be talking about, for an extended reality. So that's a little bit of tech, but it's a lot of bit of consciousness too. So first off, what was your reaction, to the verdict? Your family, how did it impact you? I know we talked a little bit about it, but how did it impact you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it was great. It was great to see that all three accounts, he was found guilty. I think the waiting process was long, and I don't, I'm ignorant to how those processes usually go. Not just in trials like this particular one, the context of this one, but how long a deliberation is supposed to take. It felt long to me. I'm like, man, what are they talking about? What could you be talking about for that long?
I started praying, like, is everything okay?
Right. And I think my wife and I were talking, let's see, it's Wednesday today, it came out yesterday. On Monday night, I think my wife had read somewhere that they were expecting it to be done on Monday night. And then that didn't happen. We got done watching a few shows and we were about to go to bed, man. And so then it didn't happen until the end of Tuesday. And so there was some content that we were recording. It's nice living here on the West Coast. I'll tell you that we don't have to wait as long the days. I found out early afternoon yesterday, obviously, which was at that time on the East Coast, 5 p.m. And it's a win. But I'll tell you, El, the first thing that I did was I went to Twitter, and Twitter is my favorite social network.
I'm here for it.
Yeah. I wish more people understood it. There's just the conversations that I've had. I think I always talk about it as the purest social network, because the irrelevant voices stay irrelevant, and the people that you want to listen to there's a natural like uptick that happens. Mm-hmm. Anyways. And so I was curious to just kind of see what get a feel for the flavor and the narrative that was happening. And actually Instagram was pretty quick to break. I think everybody was ready. Everybody had posts ready to put out there and kind of help lead people through. And so it was joy and happiness, and then but also you quickly understood that there's a lot of emotions surrounding this, of like, okay, the feeling of like, yes, we got the win, but then also looking to the future of how many more this is the first win ever, maybe, and how many more wins need to happen. And also with the understanding that this win was not the game-winning 3-point shot. It was a layup, and it's been a layup for a long time, and we've missed countless layups. Yeah. This wasn't hard, but it was. And so just the understanding of like, yes, this is a massive victory, but simultaneously mourning how long it took us to get our first win.
That's it.
And this is really watering down and kind of doing a broad stroke on all of these emotions. They go way deeper than how I've just described it, and are certainly more weighty than the metaphor of a basketball game. But and so I think just really trying to, and that was the first question I asked you, or pretty close to the first question when we hopped on today, just me as a white male in America, trying to understand better all of the scope of the emotions that are being felt, and understanding that it's not just, it is, but it's not exclusively a sigh of relief and joy. There's so many other emotions that have come along with this. And I'm processing those things and feeling those things, and wanting to know other things that I should be feeling, so that for the next trial, and whenever that is and whatever that looks like, I better understand what my Black community is walking through. So I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I wanted to always just kind of make this a part of my conversations, not because it's a hot topic now. It's always been a hot topic within the race, but now it's definitely more in the spotlight right now. But just because this is sometimes some of the discussions that I would have behind closed doors, that I really feel like these platforms that we've been talking about today, and we're in media, can be used for, so we can have so we can build new worlds that are really and truly more reflective of who we are. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you sharing your perspective of that. And I know Social Media Church has had a wide range of diversified voices, or diversity in voices. I've been on there, and I know that seems like it's been a passion of your group. Like, it just seems pretty balanced. I've seen a variety of voices represented on the platform.
And I think not just for the sake of variety, and you can tell when people are putting on a front, doing something right, and you can tell when people genuinely care. And I think for Nils and I, obviously, like, it's really important to acknowledge this. In 2013, this conversation was started by an Asian American, DJ Chuang. Like, this podcast was started by an Asian American. It was not started by two white guys, and generally a white male race that has dominated the Western Christian space. And so it's really important to understand where things were founded. And I think the conference is providing us a great opportunity to really celebrate what DJ started. He had no idea that this podcast he was passing off to Nils, a white male, would end up changing thousands of church leaders and ministry leaders' trajectory, and ultimately leading to a conference in 2020, a virtual conference in 2021. And so I think it starts there. But I also want to say that Nils and I have had so many conversations of trying to figure out, this is even so hard to talk about, so hard to find the words, feeling all the things we're feeling, but understanding that we're white males in America and really wrestling with what role do we play. And I think one of the places that both of us have landed is we do have platforms. And Nils a much, much, much larger platform than myself. And he's been doing it for a lot longer. But in the ways that we both have platforms, understanding that we have an opportunity, one, we have followers, and two, we have an opportunity to put other people and invite other people up onto the stage that we have, and to invite them to the tables that we get to sit at. And one of the cool things, just transparently, that has been happening in this season for both Nils and I is the number of Black leaders, Black pastors that we've been able to pour into, not because we have all the answers. We've just been able to encourage and push forward in the most important season where America needs. And it's so fun to see God. I really believe that God is using Black pastors in this season, the race that has been pushed down the most, that has been, has the longest history, all of these things, is set apart from all other minority races in America. God is using the least, in the sense, right? The lowest on the totem pole, true to God's economy, to lead through. And I don't think we've seen the fullness of that yet, but I think Nils and I are getting glimpses as we've been blessed to be asked to help in these contexts. And so for me, this is a little bit kind of choppy and long-winded. I apologize, but I'm really passionate about the plea that I've come to as a white male in America is that I need more, and there are definitely some. I need more Black pastors and Black leaders to help lead this through. And the thing that I play in that is being able to highlight those voices. And so this, long circle back to the podcast, Nils and I try to take as many opportunities as we can to highlight that and highlight people that don't otherwise get highlighted. They're doing the same thing, and they're doing it at the same level, with the same quality, with the same reach. They're just not as highlighted. And so we've had people like Derwin Gray on. We haven't got Mike Todd on. We work with Mike Todd, but we haven't had Mike Todd on, but we've had some of his team on and their online pastors on, Pastor Julia and Pastor DeMario. And just really, really incredible voices. And even outside of the podcast, Nils, I don't know if you know Jason Caston or if your audience is familiar with Jason.
Wow.
But Jason, Nils just hopped on like this. StreamYard hopped on his personal profiles. This was a couple, maybe last year, just hopped on and was like, hey, I'm working through this. I'd love for you to help me and my audience work through this. And then just a couple of days ago, he had a guy named Drew, who lives in New York and was a part of New Life Fellowship with Pete Scazzaro. There, he now has his own church, but he's an Asian American, and so Nils did the same thing. He's like, "Hey, help us walk through and process what all is going on with the Asian community in this season, and Asian hate and those sorts of things." And so, I think what Nils and I have kind of found is that God has given us things, whether that's stage, tables we sit at, and we have an opportunity to invite voices who nobody else has seemed to invite into the conversation. We have an opportunity to do that. And so above all, we're very passionate about that.
And this is just the conversation I wanted to have. It's one thing when we can talk about all the tech and everything that we have going on, but I am as much interested in how we feel about what we see that's happening around us as what's going to push the tech, or use the tech to push that narrative, I should say, is what I'm most interested in. And so, in case you didn't know, if you're just joining us, Social Media Church sponsoring their very first ever conference. It is going to be taking place July 13th through the 15th. I'm very excited to be one of the speakers on that conference. And if you want to be my special guest, we'll put this link in the description as well.
Yes.
But you can go right there to LMichelleMedia.co/social media church and get signed up there to be a part of this conference. And I just think it's phenomenal, Aaron. I'm just so happy and so blessed to be a part of it. And just feeling so fueled now more than ever when it comes to ministering through media and then being authentic too.
That's right. What a day and age that we get to do this. I mean, I think about how God chooses leaders for seasons all throughout history. And I cannot believe, I'm just very humbled and honored the season that this is to lead the church, to lead people to Christ. And the people that I get to do that with, people like yourself, also. Thank you so much for having me on. I just really appreciate you, your voice, and I will be celebrating you for a long time.
Yeah, same here, Aaron. Thank you for your enthusiasm and thank you for your heart and your family. Make sure you say hello to your wife, who is a powerhouse as well. I can't wait to talk to her sometime. But we just thank you for listening into this conversation and many more conversations like this to come as we continue to work toward the healing that we all need and impacting each other's lives. So until next time, you guys, love you. See you soon.